We made a judgment, William, not for politics or passports, but the integrity of our sport was so in question, and the ability of a Ukraine team, which would number 75 under normal circumstances, now down to under 30, predominantly female. 150 athletes have lost their lives. I went to a war grave to honour them. And the thought that we would give the full panoply of a championships unimpeded to such aggressive nations, just we couldn't do that. As the International Federation, all 26 members unanimously voted to exclude them.
You've just been to Ukraine.
Yes.
You met President Zelensky.
Yes.
You went, I think, to see the particular difficulties faced by the team there preparing for the Olympics. So what did you learn in Ukraine?
Goodness me. I went to an exhibition in France just yesterday of Turner, and I was taken by a quote as I walked in, which was, "My business is to paint what I see, not what I know is there." And this trip for me was probably one of the profoundest trips I've ever taken, and I've seen some interesting things. I think boarding that train at the Polish border, and that's the only way in really to the country, and then arriving at a platform at the same time as a hospital train with an intensive care unit on board where life and death surgery is taking place, bringing people back from the front, and a sea of ambulances and families waiting for good or bad news. And then leaving Kiev that night, having met the president, having been to destroyed sporting facilities, some of which had been targeted knowing that only 10 minutes earlier children had arrived to start a sporting day. And then leaving in the evening to another hospital train coming in. We made a judgment, William, not for politics or passports, but the integrity of our sport was so in question, and the ability of a Ukraine team, which would number 75 under normal circumstances, now down to under 30, predominantly female. 150 athletes have lost their lives. I went to a war grave to honour them. And the thought that we would give the full panoply of a championships unimpeded to such aggressive nations, just we couldn't do that. As the International Federation, all 26 members unanimously voted to exclude them.
So you've banned Russian and Belarusian athletes from athletics, right? And that is why. And that is, just to explain for people the difference between your position and, as I understand it, the International Olympic Committee position and some other sports, which is that those people, those Russians, they can't compete as Russia, but they can compete as independent athletes, neutral athletes in some ways.
We made the judgment that for the reasons I've just given, that it was inconceivable that we could have a Ukraine team so denuded in numbers, and coaches fighting on the front line, and athletes fighting, the male athletes on the front line, and a lot of the women there in similar positions, and medical support, that we made the judgment that was just inconsistent. Other sports chose to take the other way. And look, I genuinely believe that we made a decision that was in the best interest of our sport, and that all international federations must have autonomy and independence in making those decisions. And I accept that the International Olympic Committee should. So I'm not really criticising other sports for taking a different view.
And I agree with you, really, but you could say, someone with a different point of view could say, well, look, there are many wars in the world. What's going on in Sudan? What has been done by the government of Myanmar? What's happening in what is Israel doing in Gaza? Shouldn't there be a lot more nations then that are banned if Russia is banned? What would be your answer to that?
I absolutely concede that there is consistency in that argument. I mean, two things. First of all, it doesn't come easily to me or my natural disposition or my council. Many of my council are Olympic champions as well, world record holders, world champions. Our default position is not to stop athletes competing. I'm not very good at the what about argument. You can only confront what is in front of you. Mm-hmm. And the world sanctioned Russia, sanctioned it financially, it sanctioned it politically, culturally, and we took the position that I think was in line with pretty much where most people were. I also accept that we probably have set some precedents. And Gaza-Israel is a raw and current challenge. And that may well be, in time, something that we do have to address. But Russia was sanctioned globally. The Israel-Palestine issue is hugely complex, and it has been going on for many years. We're not a government, we're not a political party. The world is complicated, but I just did not want to fall into the what about. There are plenty of genuine what abouts, which in time we will probably have to look at.
I'm Manveen Rana from The Story, a daily news podcast from The Times. Join me and my co-host Luke Jones for a deep dive into the big stories and investigations. Plus, each month, William Hague hosts an agenda-setting interview with a key newsmaker or big thinker. That's The Story, The Times daily podcast that brings the story told in depth. Listen every weekday on the Times radio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Story today, Seb Coe on banning athletes, doping, and finding a place for transgender competitors.